All right, hang in there, everybody. One more to go, and then you get a break. Again, I'm Sparky. I'm with the BLM here in Grand Junction in my 23rd year. Wow. Working for the BLM, I'm a weed management specialist that has morphed into doing a lot of riparian restoration along our rivers, especially over about the last 10 or 15 years. And I've learned some things, some good, some not so good. You'll see through my talk that I like to tinker, I like to build things. I'm an old logger, so I like heavy equipment. Some of the things you'll see that I helped build, some of them I did not. They're not my ideas, but we've tried a lot of stuff. I heard it in a talk earlier. I think it was Peter talking about the experimentation. And a lot of this work is an experiment sometimes as we try different things. My goal for you will be if maybe you see something that piques your interest, you want to try or you want to learn more about, I'd be glad to visit with you. So we got some things that I've learned and then toys. That's what my presentation is about. In the first part of it, I'm gonna share with you some new stuff that we did this last fall on the Dolores River and some really nasty tamarisk stands. So here we go. Everybody hear me okay? We're doing good? Okay, this is a typical site on the Dolores. There is actually a river between the highway and that cliff. You just can't see it. Super thick, super dense, tamarisk and elm in there. Literally, you got to crawl on your hands and knees to get through it. And when I did that, I could find nothing really good in there except cheatgrass. This isn't good, but there was cheatgrass, musk thistle, and the only thing that was in there that we wanted to leave was some New Mexico privet, real small diameter stuff hanging out in there. And my challenge, and I've been thinking about this particular stretch for a long time, was how to handle a giant amount of biomass in a small area. What do I do with it all? We had mulched some similar stands like this in the past, where we mulched it completely, and while it got the tamarisk out of there, we had just such a thick bed of mulch it was hard to get anything to grow through it, both good or bad. So as you'll see, we took a fairly aggressive approach to how we were going to deal with this. But first, before I jump into that, I want to give my plug for the Bio Control program on tamarisk, and that I really think it has helped make what we're doing a lot more palatable. These trees look dead, but most of them are not. But boy, they're really sick. And in the old days before the beetle, if you went and cut down one of those trees and went back to your truck and ate a sandwich, by the time you went back over there again, it already resprouted, probably ate your chainsaw. It was a really, really tough plant. But now that these trees are so weak, it's really added in combination the beetle and other methods have made this expensive kind of work that we do, I think, a lot easier. So hats off to the Bio Control program there. Okay, here's what we did last fall that I wanted to share with you. It was a 2-machine combo. The excavator on the left, the big one, his job was to jump in there and mulch about 3/4 of the tree. Leave a tall stump that'll reduce the number of chips, and that tall stump gives the machine on the right the ability, something to grab onto, to pluck it, pile it, rake the chips, and go from there. So I like excavators because they're selective. They're not the fastest machine in the toolbox, but they are selective. If you look closely there between where the camera and the excavator, you see those little shrubs, and there are those, with the excavator you can see them, you can work around them, and every one of those shrubs that we preserve is one that we don't have to plant later on, and they really release after the tamarisk competition is taken out. So I really like the excavators. This gives you a close-up of the machine head there with Stan as a scale model there. That's a pretty heavy-duty one. That machine head's 4,000 pounds. It's got a lot of mass. It has its own diesel engine to power the head. It can chew through a 20-inch diameter tree without even slowing down. Pretty powerful machine. The next one, I love this attachment on the smaller excavator. It looks like it belongs in a dinosaur museum or something, but it's a grapple with a thumb, and that's what we were using to do the second part of it. So here's step one, mulching the tree. You can see how thick and nasty that country was in there. It looked awful. Ooh, man, it looked really nasty when we were doing this work, but sometimes we've got to make a mess to clean things up. But you can see the tall stumps that he left for the next guy to come through, and it was no problem whatsoever for him to extract and pull those out, pick them up, and then he would pile it. We had great soil moisture, the last 2 falls, so I was actually amazed that machine could pull 6-foot roots out of the ground. The other thing you could do, I call it the elminator, when we had lots of those elms, is we would do stuff like this with some of the elms. I guarantee you that one won't resprout. And I'll show you later what we did with the biomass on a lot of the elms. The next step, the third step, was we would rake the chips into the soil. We have had issues having enough soil to put seed on in the past, so over that entire 12-acre piece, we turned it into a big garden in a sense. And so he raked the material in so we got a good seed bed. You got to have your dog with you as well when you do that. This is kind of what it looks like after we were done, and the piles were put in, kind of pocketed. Good soil, good seed bed, I think. Remember, there was nothing good in here to start with, so we weren't tearing out a lot of good stuff. There was one area I didn't know what to do. There was so much debris. What do we do with it? So we dug a big hole and we shoved it in. It was a small area about the size of this room. It was debris from the highway construction. We were having a hard time even getting to the soil. So that's what we did on that particular piece. And then, of course, he just covered that hole back up with a pile of soil and spread the dirt around. So we did that on a little spot. Step 4 was to burn the piles that we built with the orange excavator. We were really lucky on this particular unit because these piles that we were burning that day were piled less than 24 hours before we built them. And one of the neat things, and again, this kind of goes back, I think, to what the beetles have done to the biocontrol. Most of the mass in those piles is roots, and they burn just fine the day after we plucked them out of the ground. And so that was pretty encouraging to see. We had about 10 piles to the acre. If you can kind of picture what that stand looked like in the first place. That's what we had was 10 piles or so to the acre. And then the next thing that we did, because when you burn these piles, they generate a lot of heat for a long time in one spot. It's hard to get stuff to grow where those burn spots were. So we just mopped up these piles with a giant orange Pulaski and mixed in nice cool soil with them into them. And I really think we're going to have a lot better success getting the grasses to grow where those burn piles were. The next thing, because we're on the highway, we had really limited space and only one place to get off on the shoulder and to fuel the machines. They had to go back and forth every day. So they created a road, essentially, and some compaction in there. So one of the last things we did was to rip that out on the way back to the loadout spot. This is what it looks like, now. This was before the final step. After we cleared that out, there's a few shrubs in there that we left, but pretty aggressive, pretty landscape. You can see the mixed up burn pile there in the foreground. I think we'll grow seed okay. Then the final step was that we put seed down on top of snow. And for whatever reason, after being a part of a lot of fire rehab projects on wildfires and other seeding projects. One of the most successful tools in the box is to broadcast seed on top of snow. It's working just about as well as drill seeding and chaining and a lot of the other things that we've done. And of course, it's a whole lot less expensive. So our hope is that this will work well. Okay, the next steps for that unit. Really good soil moisture right now. I think we'll get good germination this spring, but we're going to need the May and June rains to grow those seedlings up tall enough so they can tolerate the heat of the summer and tolerate the herbicide that we'll undoubtedly need to put out on some of that to kill musk thistle. We'll girdle the remaining elms because we created a great seed bed for an elm forest, so we'll girdle those. A lot of them were already girdled by beaver. I'll leave them standing for now just to give a little bit of shade, I'm hoping to the grass seedlings, to keep them a little cooler in that hot canyon. We'll get ready for musk thistle, and then I'm not sure what's going to happen with cheatgrass. I'm fairly optimistic in that we ripped out this year's crop. And being a winter annual and germinating in the fall, we may not get much come back this spring, and if we get good grass seedling establishment, we may outcompete the cheatgrass. We did this last fall based on a little bit of experience on a similar kind of site north of Gateway a couple of years earlier, where we got, in the sense it was similar, and that we got aggressive with soil disturbance in a really thick stand of tamarisk. And I felt pretty good at how that particular site is progressing a couple of years later. It's not perfect. You can still see cheatgrass in that picture, but you see a lot of those seeded grasses are establishing well. The shrubs are happy, the cottonwoods are happy, so I'm optimistic that what we did last fall will do okay. Okay, there's another way to get rid of biomass where we couldn't get machines. We don't have room to pile it or burn it, to take advantage of people's attraction for free stuff. So we would, my crew would just stack it along the highway, and literally in 24 hours it's gone. And the locals love it. A free source of firewood, and it helps us get rid of some of the biomass. Best cut stump recipe for tamarisk. This is not new to you to do this kind of work. It's the ester version of Triclopyr with an oil on the stump. Works really well for tamarisk, but don't do it if it's hot. One of the lessons I learned early in my career was to do cut stump work with the ester in July at a cottonwood gallery, and it did a great job on the tamarisk, but I whacked the entire cottonwood gallery with volatilized Triclopyr. So don't do that. The good news is that the cottonwoods rebounded. They were fine. They survived it. But it was really embarrassing and really scary. Put it on soon after you cut it so that the stump doesn't have a chance to seal over at all. Basal bark or resprouts on tamarisk is the same recipe. If you look carefully on the label of Triclopyr, there's a spray to wet mix and there's a spray to runoff mix, and they're very different. Depends on the amount of Triclopyr in the solution. But basal bark on resprout the tamarisk is very effective, and we had great results doing it in the dead of winter when it's totally dormant, as long as the stems are dry. About Russian olives, it's a lot of fun to untangle monsters like this with a power saw. I guess my word of advice would be to you, if you don't want Russian olives in your system, don't wait too long to do something about it. That tree was only 27 years old along the Colorado River, where it was well watered, so they grow fast. If you want to kill them with cut stump, use undiluted glyphosate. It's really effective on Russian olives. And again, apply it soon after you cut. I have tried other things with cut stump on tamarisk, and that's using Imazapyr, or Imazapyr, as I like to call it. It's the dilute solution on the label. It works well for cut stump. I think it's cheaper in the long run than the Triclopyr, but Imazapyr, it's actually a bare ground herbicide, so it sticks around a long time, so you do got to be a little bit careful. A little thing that we learned here, you can see it worked well on the see the yellowing in the New Mexico privet. That's about 8 months after we cut those stumps. And no doubt that the rains, washed some Imazapyr into the root zone of the privet, and it dinged it. It's going to pull through okay, but just a word of caution with Imazapyr. How about Russian knapweed? It's a common sight on western rivers, especially around here. Oceans and oceans of Russian knapweed. And really a site like this is locked. It's not going to go anywhere unless we do something about it, either chemically or hopefully in the not too distant future, the bioagents will work well on Russian knapweed. If you want to kill Russian knapweed, the best knapweed complex herbicide that I've come across, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is aminopyrrolid. And the later that you apply it, the better it works. And I had great results spraying Russian knapweed in December, long after it had gone dormant. In fact, I mowed a 25-acre patch of Russian knapweed with a tractor first, and then sprayed the stubble with Milestone in December, and it worked fabulous. So that tells you that's working in the soil, where those buds are going to emerge in the knapweed a little bit later. Clopyrrolid works really well on knapweed too. We usually use this under high-value trees. It doesn't seem to last as long as the aminopyrrolid, but they're both pretty good knapweed herbicides. We've done some planting of dormant poles, cottonwoods. You've seen this in some other presentations. That's a stinger on an excavator. The thing that I'm going to talk about here is testing the hole for salt levels to see if that's a good place to plant a not very salt-tolerant cottonwood tree. So go to Home Depot, buy a piece of conduit, and graduate it with a Sharpie. Steal your wife's measuring cup from the kitchen collection, bolt it to the bottom of the pole, and then you can sample the soil or the water or whatever down at the bottom and test for salt. Backpack sprayers. I'm all about why not working harder. I hate backpack sprayers. Fun factor is definitely down on that. This is on the Colorado River. That patch took 340 loads of backpack sprayers to spray. It worked well, but it's hard to get repeat volunteers. So there's a better way of doing this. Why not build a boat? I would love to visit with anybody if you've got any kind of river or lake treatments you want to do with a weed spraying boat like this. I'd love to visit with you. What a fantastic tool that has been for us to treat those oceans of Russian knapweed that we have along the rivers. We can get 600 feet away from the boat and spray lots and lots of weeds. Again, why work harder? This is on the Dolores. I had a lot of work to do on the other side. I couldn't get there, and I wasn't going to carry a backpack sprayer. So why not carry your sprayer across on the raft? And we've done a lot of this sort of stuff on our river. I get eyebrows raised on the safety folks, stuff, but it's really not bad. It's no different than putting 3 linebackers in the boat. It's about the same weight. How about some little implements? This has been a pretty neat little tool. It's just a miniature version of the big one on the farm. You can adjust the pressure on the discs. You can drop the wheels and drag it down the road. And it's a good little seed bed prep tool, followed by a cultipacker, so broadcast your seed and then cultipack it, just like on the farm. It's worked pretty well for us on some sites on the Dolores River. Sometimes we're going to want to water stuff. This is something we built in my garage. It's a little remote solar irrigation system. And it consists of a panel, a timer regulator, a battery. Down there is a little bilge pump that you put in your boat. And here on the beach is a filter system. And it worked pretty neat. About the time I got it all calibrated and it was watering stuff well, somebody stole all of it, except for the bucket. So solar panels and batteries, if you don't hide them, they're gone. You can do the same kind of thing, gravity out of a barrel. If you want to water little trees or whatever it is. You got a filter, you got a timer. Pretty effective. So some thoughts, and it's neat because a lot of these I've heard in presentations earlier today. You know, a lot of these sites, after doing this now for a while, they're going to heal on their own once the competition's reduced. But the key statement I think here is patience. In the fire rehab program, you know, we usually say we can't decide whether we're successful or we failed in our efforts 3, 5, 10 years later after you do something. And I think the same is true on the riparian areas. We've just got to be patient and let them work. I think our goal is to set these sites on the right successional path. Because when we have tamarisk and we have Russian knapweed and stuff like that, it's essentially locked at climax. And until we can set it back and put it on the right path, you know, it's not going to go anywhere. So our goal is to restart it, take away competition. We have new twist to weed management this year on the Dolores. If something doesn't seem right, it probably isn't. My crew saw stuff that didn't fit all summer long. And sure enough, there were the 2 big marijuana grows that were in the media were right where we wanted to work last fall. And, you know, the implications of this were that we had to redirect late at night a lot of resources to get out of the way of what law enforcement needed to do. So that was a little different. They grew really tall, so maybe they're doing something we can learn. I don't know. And finally, my last 2 slides. We kind of suspected that there was, you know, something in the Dolores River aquatic life so we decided to do a little bit sampling, and yes, there are killer whales in the Dolores. That's it. You got it. Questions? Yes, sir.
Regarding the direct seed on top of snow technique, did you do that in a lot of places? Were there any environmental factors that you noticed may have had an effect one way or the other? Did they need snow on top of the seeds, or did you notice anything about additional factors to make that work?
You know, if there's anybody that knows more about why seeding on snow works, well, jump in. You know, I think ideally you seed on snow and it snows again on top of the seed. The seed's going to get down on the surface and there's a nice little micro.
Was that snow spring snow or fall snow?
That was
early winter snow?
That was December was when we seeded.
So they're getting a nice long winter.
We've seeded on snow as late as March and had good results out on the wildlands after burns. And
similar to the pothole planting and stuff that you talked about?
Well, no. A lot of times on wildfires, we did nothing but seed on top of snow. We didn't do anything to the ground underneath it. Okay. This had a lot of different things happening. We did the soil prep too, and then seeded on the snow.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Next.
Aside from the weeds that you mentioned, cheatgrass, knapweed, basal, are you worried about any other weeds with that much disturbance?
Yeah.
All of them.
I would have been a lot more leery of getting that rowdy on that site if there had been a bunch of kochia around there. But the nearest kochia was quite a ways. Not that it can't move in there, it won't move in there, but kochia would have been really scary. There were a lot of it, and that one's a pain. Hopefully you can outcompete it. But we also have white top, quarry grass, Russian thistle. A lot of the annuals, you know, if we can get stuff started, competition will work well on a lot of the annual weeds. The perennial weeds we're treating for sure. The knapweeds. Must, I don't know how much must will be there. We tore out all the rosettes, but who knows what's in the seed bank. Could be thick.
I like your burying technique, but I'm a little, I'm interested to see how much tamarisk grows back in those spots. In the previous site that you did you also bury tamarisk?
No.
No. So you'll be you'll have some results to share next year.
Yeah, and most what we buried in that hole was just chips
Oh,
and,
okay.
and debris and duff.
How deep were those? Was the top layer of over the material?
It was really thick.
Okay.
So, and it was a spot about the size of this room. We only did that in that one area where we buried